Hey, this is Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA prime Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all, those gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. The best I've ever had, probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100, 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for UppercutChops.com. Yes! And a welcome in to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates, plus independents from coast to coast. Everybody also listening in on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, and WOW Cable Television. Also those watching, that is. Thanks for joining us over there in select markets, as well as Hotel TV in over 500,000 rooms from coast to coast, and on Facebook, Chicago Food Favorites. Yes, folks, make sure you check that out. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun group, lots of people there. So right now, about 1,700 people grown organically. Hopefully, we're going to get it up to about 100,000, but you never know where it's going to go. Everybody joins in, have some fun, and guess what? Post your favorite restaurants, your favorite recipes, and I don't know, your likes, dislikes, whatever. And guess what? We're at Christmas time, so maybe all your Christmas food, too. How do you like them apples? All right, moving on. All right, Corky, thanks for joining us here. And I have to run down this real quick because it is the NCAA college basketball rankings, and there's some really good games that have been played recently, and we want to acknowledge some of these. Of course, we're going to get to the top 25 in just a moment here, but we have to talk a little bit about these matchups too. We're going to start at 25 and work our way up. Number 25, Baylor, and mind you, this goes all the way through today. These are current rankings. Baylor is ranked 25 with their win at Norfolk. Really didn't matter too much on that one. Illinois goes to number 24. Actually, they stay at number 24 with their 80-77 win against Mizzou. Up next for them is Chicago State. Should be an easy win for Illinois. Arkansas remains 23rd, 10-2, and they have Oakland up next. Again, it should be a very easy win for them. UCLA drops 4 slots to number 22 with their 2-point loss against Carolina. Up next for them, it doesn't get any easier. They've got number 14th ranked Gonzaga Bulldogs and Mark Few. Purdue drops 5 slots with their win, or better yet, with their loss. I want to say win, but with their loss against Auburn. And Auburn came in, and Auburn just put a good old-fashioned ass whooping on them. And as for all you people down there in WAUD over in Auburn, Alabama, thanks for joining as well. And so, folks, let me tell you something. When we look at these rankings, we kind of shake our head and say, sometimes the rankings aren't indicative of the teams and their strength. And so as we look at these teams and their strength, we ask ourselves, what are we really trying to accomplish here, being the teams, not us personally, because we're just watching the games, if you know what I mean. But when these teams, they match up. Now I'm going to go right back to this Purdue and Auburn game. The Purdue and Auburn game was a very good game for Auburn. It was really a bad game for Purdue because it exposed what Purdue has to work with after the loss of Zach Edey to the Memphis Grizzlies. But Auburn is looking really good, and they are number 2 for a very, very good reason. Now, San Diego State jumps up 3 slots to number 20 with their win at Cal, and it was a 21-point win at Cal. It was a complete blowout. Up next for them is University of Southern Utah. Number 19, Mississippi State. They remain unchanged with their 13-point win against Memphis. Not really sure how that happens. And number 18, Michigan State jumps up 2, actually, from 20 to 18 with their win over FAU. Up next for them is Western Michigan. Cincinnati jumps up 2 slots to number 17. Up next for them is Kansas State. And Ole Miss jumps up 1 to number 16. Up next for them is Memphis. Now, Memphis just got smashed by Mississippi State. Mississippi State remained unchanged. So I wonder what's going to happen when Ole Miss beats them there. Houston remains 15th with their win. And up next for them is Oak State. Gonzaga drops 1. They drop 1, mind you, and they won by 21. Now, that makes no sense whatsoever. I don't understand how this works. But then again, I guess I don't have to understand how it works. I look at these rankings and I ask myself, well, wait a minute. What is the criteria here? If you win by 21 on the road, how in the world do you drop 1 slot in the rankings? I guess it's a little bit about...
Show me the money!
Yeah, show me the money. It could be a little bit of that. Anyway, up next for Houston is Oak State. Gonzaga has UCLA in Westwood next. And if they win there, my guess is they're probably not going to drop a slot. Maybe they might remain unchanged at 14. Texas A&M drops 1 slot with their 32-point victory. That's right. They dropped 1 slot and won by 32. That makes no sense whatsoever. Hey, Melissa. And so when you think about these games, you ask yourself, how in the world do these teams drop with big wins? It doesn't make sense. Oklahoma goes up 2 to number 12. And up next for them is a broken Coke machine. UConn remains the same at number 11 with their win against Butler. Up next for them is DePaul. You know, DePaul out of Chicago, I got to tell you, folks, DePaul, when I was growing up, it was Ray Meyer's DePaul Blue Demons. They had good guys, good players, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings, etc. Everybody in Chicagoland on Chicago Food Favorites can understand this one. And, then they had Joey Meyer. Then they had this guy and then that guy. Look, the coaching hasn't been terrible. It's just that DePaul can't seem to draw the right recruits. Because remember now, who is DePaul competing against in Chicagoland? First of all, we have to say, well, maybe they're recruiting against the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. All right, that's a problem because they're always good every year. And Purdue is also inside Chicagoland as well. And guess what? Marquette is recruiting in Chicago as well. So regionally speaking, those schools are taking a bite. Michigan State is taking a bite out of recruiting from Chicagoland as well. Michigan is doing the same thing. Iowa is doing the same thing. Northwestern right there in Chicago for the kids that actually have brains. They're competing for players there too. Oh, yeah. And so you see, as we go down the trough, we say, okay, well, Loyola is getting some pretty good recruits, and they've done very well. That's Loyola of Chicago, of course. A nice round of applause. Went to law school there. And so DePaul is competing against all of these. And DePaul's even competing against University of Illinois at Chicago. And yes, they're competing against Valparaiso. They're competing against Chicago State, believe it or not. Yeah. And so the question is, where does DePaul get their recruits from? Academically, it's a decent institution. But the problem is they're competing against 10 other institutions regionally and within the city. And so DePaul, they're in the Big East. And ever since they went to the Big East, they just can't pull it together. I don't know how few games they've actually won in the Big East historically, back to when they first entered years ago. But I got to tell you, DePaul may look good. Well, these guys can shoot. Yeah, but can they defend? No, they can't seem to defend. It just seems like we watch the same movie every time we see the DePaul Blue Demons, and somehow they blow leads. They'll get out to a lead. They can't hold the lead. And look, they're over in the Big East with Big Bad UConn and all these others over there. And I got to tell you, DePaul, they really need to do something on the recruiting front because they just can't seem to get the right players and they can't seem to win. They're going to have to drop out of that conference. They don't belong in there in the first place. Anyway, top 10. We have Kentucky dropped 6 slots with their loss, a 20-point loss. Yeah, that's not real good. That's not good. Oregon jumps up 1 to number 9 with their win at home against Stanford. Up next for them is Weber State. Marquette, we talked about Marquette a minute ago, recruiting in the Chicagoland area, jumped up one slot to number 8 with their win, very tough win against Xavier. A very good squad out of Cincinnati. Up next for them is Providence. The Kansas Jayhawks jumped back up one slot to number 7 with their win against Brown, and it was a 24-point win at Brown, but yet Gonzaga wins by 20-odd points, and they dropped a slot. How does that work? And they actually beat a better team. Up next for Kansas, West Virginia. Florida jumped up one slot with a 54-point win at North Florida over the Osprey. And I got to tell you, they don't deserve to jump up in that one if Gonzaga doesn't deserve to go up one either. Anyway, up next for them is Stetson. Alabama goes up one with their win at Kent State. Up next for them is San Diego State. Duke jumps up to number 4 with their win against Georgia Tech, a big win. Up next for them is Va Tech. Iowa State remains unchanged with their 27 road point win at Morgan State. Up next for them is Colorado. Auburn, we mentioned with their win against Purdue at West Lafayette. It was a huge win, an 18-point win. Up next for them is Monmouth. And the number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers with their 48-point win over Western Carolina. Up next to them is Middle Tennessee State. And that is your top 25 in college basketball, according to the Associated Press. In fact, when we come back, we're going to shift into football, talk a little bit of college football, maybe a little bit of baseball as well. Folks, everybody watching on Chicago Food Favorites, send over your ideas on what you want to hear, and we will talk more food for Chicagoland and all corners of the earth. Back here in a few minutes. You're going to win with us. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at
714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100.
Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Could you use a little extra money right now? If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UppercutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UppercutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UppercutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door. store without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at uppercutchops.com or call
714-948-0100, 714-948-0100, again, 714-948-0100.
or make your selection directly at uppercutchops.com.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This show is brought to you by, and, well, in part by, of course, Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. Make sure you check out Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun group where you post your favorite restaurants and your favorite recipes. Doesn't even have to be in Chicagoland. It could be influenced partially by the city, or maybe you're from the city or from the area, and maybe you just want to talk food. Guess what? It doesn't matter where you're at. In all corners of the earth, for all you flat earthers out there, guess what, folks? Chicago Food Favorites, a fun group. Go ahead, check it out on Facebook, and tell them the circus sent you. I don't know who you're going to tell, but it's kind of fun anyway. And a big welcome back to everybody listening in on our CBS, NBC, and Fox Sports affiliates and independents, including our friends over in Honolulu on CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the San Francisco 49ers, the New York Yankees, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Welcome into everybody else up and down the West Coast on all of our affiliates and independents through the heartland over to Auburn, Alabama, WAUD, home of the Atlanta Braves. Thanks for joining us also in Atlanta on WDJY 99.1 FM. And plus everybody else watching on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, and WOW Cable affiliates in select markets, plus Hotel TV, as mentioned, also on Chicago Food Favorites, and pick your favorite streaming platform. All right. How about a little college football? People had watched the CFP playoff first round, and people said, these games were blowouts, so they were this, they were that. And I'll tell you one thing, before I get into the next round matchup. The one thing that I look at with this, and I say, Indiana played Notre Dame in that game, and it should necessarily not have been at South Bend, Indiana. It really should not have been. And there's a reason. The reason for that is because Notre Dame did not play a conference championship game. They basically played one game less than everybody else. And there's no reason for those guys to be able to host a home game in their stadium. Honestly, it's wrong for all the right reasons. And if you look back at it, you say, well, those guys from South Bend, they dominated the game. They dominated the game for part of it. But then again, Indiana came in there and they did what they do. They played a very good game. They didn't really get much onto the scoreboard till late in the game. But remember, if you did watch that game, you saw really this game. Okay, so it ended in a 10-point victory. However, one blown tackle caused a 98-yard run for the home team. Yeah, okay. So you take away that score because we live in fantasy land, we could do that. And you say, all right, now what do we have? We have a 3-point victory by the home team. 3. Indiana played fairly well in the grand scheme of things. Little sticker shock to start the game, but like all other teams, all other squads that are out there traveling. I mean, look, those things happen. End of day, I don't necessarily believe that the committee got the teams wrong, but I do believe that the committee got who hosts games wrong. That is really what it's about. And these announcers were saying, well, it looks like the committee really got the first round wrong. And this is when the home team was up in South Bend. They were up by a couple of touchdowns, 3 touchdowns late in the game, whatever. And I think what was wrong with that is that, mind you, they said, well, the committee got it wrong. Mind you, this was the only game that was being played. It was the only one that has been played at that point. And so here the announcers are ripping on the Indiana because they weren't keeping pace midway through the game score-wise or late in the game score-wise with the home team. And of course, as we saw, that game was a hell of a lot tighter than what it was. And Clemson did the same thing in their game. But at the end of the day, it was wrong for what they did, being the announcers, and it was unjust for what the announcers did. And the announcers, of course, being pro Notre Dame. And that always deserves a nice chorus of boos. I just don't seem to understand it. And look, people had asked me, they say, well, you got to accept it into all three major schools in the state of Indiana. There's a reason I went there. When I was a kid, I didn't like going back to Indiana to see my relatives in Northwest Indiana. We're going to get to that part in just a minute over in that Stark County. I think it's Stark County. Anyway, that's in that Knox, Indiana area, whatever. And we have a story about a guy that's in the same family. Anyway, I didn't like driving there as a kid, and my sister could attest to this one too. And our father just drove us out there every weekend to go see the family, and we had to take the blasted Dan Ryan Expressway. If you're in Chicago, you know this is like one of the worst roads seemingly in America. It's always bumper to bumper and all this other crap. So I said, you know what? I'm living in California. I'm going to come out back to school in Indiana to go to a good school, a good major university, and then hopefully move on to law school and so forth and so on, whatever. So I applied to all three majors in Indiana. I'm completely digressing, but bear with me here, folks. And what ended up happening is I got into all three of them, and I got a scholarship from Purdue. It's one of the best engineering schools in the country. Indiana, a solid university, the same school system as Purdue. And then I got into Notre Dame, and Notre Dame wanted me to take an extra year of electives so they could get an extra $50,000 out of me as a student. Now, this is what they do, folks. And how embarrassing is that? But anyway, I said, thank you, but no thank you. I'm a fighting Italian. I'm not a fighting Irishman. So guess what? I'm going to steamroll you, and I'm going to go to Purdue, and I ended up going there. But it seems like the media gives those guys over in South Bend every possible positive accolade of everything you can imagine. It's disgusting. And even growing up there in Chicagoland, thinking about those guys against the Trojans from Southern Cal. Every time SC would be playing them end of the year, the last game, it seemed like those guys from South Bend got every possible accolade, and SC didn't get the recognition. It's ridiculous. And one of my very, very dear friends and our football guy, our college football guy on the show is the great Anthony Davis from USC. In fact, he's the only guy in NCAA history that has ever won 5 national titles in 3 years. That would be 3 College World Series as a center fielder for the USC Trojans and 2 national titles in college football. And, of course, he won one of those against Notre Dame. Yes! Anyway, so thinking about what happens in the media, it was very unfair for what the media did to Indiana against the home team. And Notre Dame did not play a conference title game. I mean, they're independent. But yet they're in the ACC in all other sports except football, which is completely ridiculous in the first place. It's like, look, you're going to have to commit at some point. It's just not fair. They get all that extra money. And look, I don't really give a damn what happens with those guys, where they play, who they play, whatever. I mean, look, they're a decent squad. They've got the quarterback from Duke, Riley Leonard. Of course, I'm very upset that he transferred out of Duke. Of course, he certainly sacrificed his academics to go to Notre Dame from Duke. That's for damn sure. And so he's getting what he wanted. He wanted to play college football over there. So be it. Good for him. But at the end of the day, it's not fair with the way that this transfer portal nonsensical BS works. And then you look at all the other bowl games. Here you have the Cure Bowl with Ohio 5.5 against Jacksonville State. We looked at that one, and that was Ohio won that one. The Gasparilla Bowl and that was Florida big in that one. The Myrtle Beach Bowl, a great game that's being played. In fact, as I'm covering this, the Idaho Potatoes Bowl being played right now. And as you look at these, some of these games are really good matchups, right? The Hawaii Bowl will be a good one. The Game Above Sports Bowl should be it's an underrated game between Pitt and Toledo. The Rate Bowl with Rutgers and K-State, I don't even see how Rutgers stays on the field with Kansas State. 68 Ventures Bowl, Arkansas State Bowling Green, a very good one. Some of these matchups, I think the committees that put these together, they really got some of these right. Oklahoma and Navy be a lot closer than you think. The Birmingham Bowl is one of the better ones with Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt. I don't know about that one, folks, but I got to tell you, Georgia Tech has come on really, really strong. But Vanderbilt's with those huge upsets. That ought to be a really good one. Texas Tech and Arkansas, they might score 200 points in that game. The Holiday Bowl, Syracuse and Washington State, that one should be another high-scoring affair. I think Washington State's going to keep that closer than the 14.5. The Las Vegas Bowl, SC and Texas A&M, I don't even know if anybody's going to score in that one. The Fenway Bowl, UConn and Carolina, no opinion because not really a fan of either of the two. The Pinstripe Bowl, BC and Nebraska, it's kind of a strange matchup, but got to give that one to Boston College because they're basically the local team. New Mexico Bowl, Louisiana and TCU, that'll be a fun game to watch. TCU is going to win, but I don't think they're going to win by 13. The Pop-Tarts Bowl, yes! Love Pop-Tarts. Miami should win big over Iowa State. The Arizona Bowl, Colorado State and Miami, that should be Miami just by a field goal. The Military Bowl, NC State, East Carolina. They say NC State, but watch out for the Pirates. Those guys are pretty good. Just like in the Alamo Bowl, BYU's defense against Dion's boys. Watch out, BYU may get an upset here. In the Independence Bowl, the stand-in Louisiana Tech and Army. Army's going to run. The whole world knows it. Music City Bowl, Missouri should beat Iowa in a 3-2 game. The Reliquist Bowl, Alabama should be all over Michigan. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl should feature Louisville by a big number over Washington. The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, that should be South Carolina against Illinois in a tough game. I don't know. LSU and Baylor, we're going to come back to this one in just a few moments, folks. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come here on the Sports Circus in just a few moments. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello, Americans. It's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time. That's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
That's ridiculous.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's csncoyotes.com for the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. All right. You know, they've been with us since the very beginning of this show over 8 years ago. And it's cool to be able to acknowledge them and all the others that have been with us since the beginning of the program as well. And you know, folks, we've done, about 2,100 shows. That's quite a few. Had lots and lots of special guests. And, you know, we've covered a lot of different topics, and we cover food as well on this. A big welcome into all of our friends on Chicago Food Favorites as well on Facebook. Folks, make sure to check out Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. I'm the administrator for it, so listen. Don't post any links where you're trying to promote anything except food, because I will give you the boot and maybe a punch in the head. I'm kidding. Anyway, folks, also, make sure you check out the sportscircus.com's partner page. Lots of great partners over there as well. And one of those is one of our favorites of all time, and that's Al's #1 Italian Beef at 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. And if you can't get there, check them out at alsbeef.com. That's alsbeef.com, and learn about the Italian beef sandwich. The food is phenomenal. They've been around since 1938. They are the originators of the Italian beef sandwich, which beats the brakes off of the garbage New York Philly cheesesteak, if you know what I'm saying. All right. I say it's garbage because it doesn't take anything to make it. They just fry up some really low cuts of beef. They throw some onions in there, throw some peppers in there, put some cheese whiz on it, slap it on a bun, and call it a day. It takes 22 hours to make the Italian beef itself. Never mind the wonderful French bread that comes with it, the au jus that is taken into a bath. That's where the sandwich goes into with the giardiniera pepper, etc., and so forth. It is amazing. I got to tell you, folks, it deserves the super applause. In fact, we're going to give it one more because we can. All right. I'll tell you what, folks. If you really haven't had that, it is really, really something special. Truly. And I'm not just saying it because those are our friends. No, it really is cooking versus frying. Okay, we burnt enough time with that. Not the food, though, if you know what I mean. No. At the end of the day, we were talking about, that wasn't really the end of the day, earlier of the day. That would be about maybe 10 minutes ago. We were talking about the college football matchups, and we did mention briefly the Citrus Bowl with South Carolina and Illinois. They say South Carolina by 8.5. You know what? Illinois plays pretty well in bowl games these days, And Illinois is 3-2 versus the top 25. Watch out, Illinois could pull an upset in this game over South Carolina. And the Citrus Bowl, of course, that's kind of a home game for South Carolina because it's played down in Orlando. But nonetheless, the fans and the alumni travel very well for the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. All right. So the Texas Bowl features Baylor and LSU. It's essentially a home game for both teams because LSU travels really well. LSU should win this game going away. The Gator Bowl. Duke travels down to Jacksonville to go play, or to Gainesville, nonetheless, to go play Ole Miss. Ole Miss is an enormous favorite in this game. Duke plays defense. Ole Miss is 40, 50, 60 points a game. This one might not end out so well for my beloved Duke Blue Devils. Stick to basketball right now, guys. The First Responder Bowl, North Texas and Texas State. Boy, this will be a fun game to watch. And this one should be Texas State in a close one over the Mean Green. The Duke's Mayo Bowl. You would think Duke University would play in that one, you know? I don't know. Anyway, Minnesota and Va-Tech. Va-Tech and Minnesota are basically a coin flip apart. And we're going to probably give that one to the Golden Gophers to win this one. I don't care what the line is. I think they'll win it at the end. The Bahamas Bowl. And that one is the Buffalo Bulls against Liberty. Now, Liberty is, Liberty's a 3-point favorite in the game. And you know what? Buffalo plays fairly well in these bowl games. And I'm not so sure that when it comes to what's going to happen with that particular matchup, I happen to think, Liberty historically, over the recent history, they have been better. But I think Buffalo's going to find a way to win that game. That's for all our friends over there that's listening to the show on WLVL up there in that greater Buffalo and Toronto market. So moving on, we have the CFP bowl games, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Now, I'm not a big fan of Chick-fil-A, but I do like the peaches. So how about let's just call it the Peach Bowl and let's not confuse it with chicken. So the Peach Bowl features Arizona State and Texas, two teams that score a lot of points. And so I don't know when the last time these two teams have played, but this ought to be a fun one to watch. So we're going to pay real close attention to that one. Despite Texas being a 2-touchdown favorite, that one's being played on the 4-letter network. Actually, all of these are. And so I'm inclined to take Arizona State with all those points. They haven't been to a big bowl game in quite some time. The Rose Bowl features a couple of teams that actually have roots in the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And so I don't know. This one is Oregon and Ohio State. Oh, yes, and they've played previously. The number one team overall, Oregon, is somehow a 2-point underdog to Ohio State. Both of these teams play a similar game. Oregon plays probably a better brand of defense. We're going to give Oregon another win. Yes, another win over Ohio State. And somehow Oregon's going to find a way to win this game, and they're probably going to match up against Texas in the semifinals. Nonetheless, that'll be one hell of a Rose Bowl between these two teams. A couple of zeros out on the field. We'll see where that one goes. Here's an underrated game that most people would probably overlook. Say, Penn State's going to run roughshod over Boise State. I don't think so. Now, if you know anything about Boise State and what they have done in the past, and I'm saying this year, Boise State, yes, they play in the Mountain West Conference. And you say, well, they don't really play anybody. And you're right. The Mountain West Conference isn't very good. And let's just kind of leave it like that. We know that they're not very competitive in the Mountain West, although some say, well, there's some really good football being played in the Mountain West Conference. I don't know about that. But I'll tell you what, back on September 7th, in case you're keeping score, the only loss that Boise State has was a 3-point loss in Eugene, Oregon to the number 1 overall seed, Oregon Ducks. 37-33, in case you're wondering. Ashton Jeanty, the best running back on the planet, ran for 192 against that very good Oregon defense, in case you're keeping score, right? And you look at this game, you say, well, hey, wait a minute. Boise State had a 20-14 lead in that at the half. 20-14. Oregon came back with a couple of touchdowns, actually a touchdown, a couple of field goals, and then they were down 27-20. Boise scored 14, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Crunch time, they scored. And it was Oregon scoring 10. But when you look at these, it was in the fourth quarter, Ashton Jeanty with a 70-yard run against Oregon. And it was Ashton Jeanty with an 8-yard run against Oregon. These are 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. That's right. And Jeanty actually scored another touchdown in the second quarter. He had 3 touchdowns against Oregon and that really tough defense. So if you're going to say, well, hey, wait a minute. You know, these guys, they play in the Mountain West. Yeah, they play in the Mountain West. You're right. But who do they play? They play nobody, except they stood up to play who? Oregon, the number 1 overall team. And so you can complain all you want and say they're not very good. And that's fine. But they're going to play a Penn State team who is not as good as the Oregon Ducks. In fact, Penn State is a quality club, but they are not of the same as Oregon in the first place. And we're spending time on this because, you know, people want to break these things down and say, well, how in the world is Penn State going to compete? Well, people say, how is Boise State going to compete? And really, folks, this is the question you should be asking. Because when you look at what Penn State has done through the year, you say, wow, these guys are pretty solid. They're pretty solid is right. And yes, they had themselves a nice big win, of course, in their bowl game. But remember, that's the same Penn State that lost, in their CFP game. That's the same Penn State team that lost to Oregon. They lost by 8, whereas Boise State only lost by 3. Guess what, folks? It's going to be one hell of a matchup. And listen, Boise State is not SMU. So sorry, Penn State fans. Don't think you're going to score 28 more points against Boise State than you did against SMU. Different squad entirely. These guys eat the ball. They eat time. They eat the clock, and they can play defense. Back here in a few minutes on the circuit. It's going to finish up. Don't go anywhere.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by the Sports Circus. Make sure you check out Chicago food favorites also make sure you check out our partners page. Lots of great partners at thesportscircus.com. All right, folks, going to jump right back into this right away. Welcome back to everybody on TV and radio. You know who you are. And I'm going to jump back into this college football playoff because you have, of course, the Rose Bowl between Oregon and Ohio State. The Fiesta Bowl featuring Boise State and Penn State. Why the Fiesta Bowl is being played on New Year's Eve, I don't know. Yet the Rose Bowl and the Peach Bowl are both played on New Year's Day. But remember, also the Sugar Bowl has to be played. And the Sugar Bowl is going to be on January 1st. Now, the only one out of these college football playoffs that are being played on the 31st is Boise State, Penn State, and the Fiesta Bowl, which doesn't make sense. Again, it makes no sense at all. But nonetheless, it makes about as much sense as the Orange Bowl being played on the 9th and the Cotton Bowl being played on the 10th, traditional New Year's Day bowl games. Nonetheless, we think Boise State's going to come up with a win against Penn State, and then it's Notre Dame is going to be playing against Georgia on New Year's Day in the Sugar Bowl. And folks, Georgia plays a very particular kind of defense that will do very well against Notre Dame. And why will they do well? Because they stop the run. It's the one thing that they do. And the guys from South Bend, they throw the ball okay. Riley Leonard's pretty good. He runs the ball too, which makes him one of those RPO kind of guys. However, Georgia faces that all season long. And I think it's going to be a long day for Notre Dame against Georgia. So we'll see them moving on, being Georgia to play Boise State. Now, Boise State and Georgia would pose a very interesting game for both of these. These teams play a very similar game. Very, very similar game. So, yeah, this is a game, believe it or not, Boise can win. And yeah, of course, I like Cinderella. It's always nice to see Cinderella, but look at the road they'd have to travel to get to the championship game. They would have to beat Penn State. They'd have to beat Georgia. Then on the top of the bracket, it looks like it might be Texas and Oregon and the Cotton Bowl. And so the Cotton Bowl likely would end up with Oregon as your winner there. And so it could be a rematch of Boise State against Oregon. Mind you, Oregon did beat them 37-34 in Eugene earlier this season. So that's actually what the committee had in mind. And I think, I got to tell you, I was really against what they did in the first place. I mean, Miami really should have been in there. And despite Clemson, what they did, yeah, you got to put them in there because those guys were good. SMU, look, I have no problem with SMU in there, but look, two teams from the ACC, Miami should have been one of the teams without question. So, that said, I think the committee overall did a pretty good job. They did a good job of leaving Alabama out. And, people that talk about this, well, yeah, it's the Oregon and Ohio State game, gear up for a rematch. And here's an article, of course, by the Associated Press, a quick one. They say, well, Oregon and Ohio State have already produced one heck of a game this season. Now, the top-seeded Ducks, 13-0, and the Buckeyes are gearing up for a rematch. Mind you, they are 11-2 to 13-0. A rematch more than 10 weeks later in college football quarterfinal game at the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. And, of course, both teams have had ample time for evolution since the 32-31 Oregon win on October 12th, but they also have the game and the players' familiarity with each other, and not to mention common opponents in the Big Ten. And, of course, Ohio State coach Ron Day said, quote, sometimes when you're playing against a team maybe from another conference in the playoffs, there's a little bit of an unknown. How can you expect this guy to play? What am I really looking at when I see the teams they're playing? This team's not that way because we played them already, and they played in the conference. So there's, again, a reference point as we move into this one. So our guys know what they're up against, but they also know that they evolved and we've evolved. And so the two very different teams heading into this game, and the teams who prepare the best is going to win, close quote. Well, gee, that's rather insightful by Mr. Day, if you know what I mean. Shut up. Seriously. So Oregon quarterback Dillon Gabriel, who really should have been given a hell of a lot more consideration for the Heisman, given the fact that Travis Hunter won, and he should not have won. Really, it should have been Ashton Jeanty that won, because he was the player that literally put his team on his back more so than Dillon Gabriel. Dillon did a great job, and he was one of the finalists for the Heisman. But it's Dillon Gabriel who went on to become the finalist for the Heisman from the quarterback position. And honestly, this guy was a very, very good quarterback, very underrated quarterback too. And so look at it this way. When you look at this matchup, I don't care what Ohio State did against Tennessee. That doesn't matter at this point. All that matters is that these two teams have played, and even Oregon's coach had said, quote, I think you could probably argue that Ohio State's best game was the game they just played. So it's important at this point in the year that you're playing really good football. Sometimes you don't know that until you step on the field. That's your job as the coach, to get ready for those moments, get our players ready and for those moments, but certainly hope that we put our best foot forward when we play in this Rose Bowl, close quote. Yeah, I get all that, but these are the political answers. What they're not answering is who actually is the better squad. And I think from top to bottom, and I think by a very small margin, I'm going to give it to Oregon, because Oregon plays better defense. Now, the home team last game against Tennessee, they play pretty good defense. I'll give it to them. But they don't play the brand of defense that Oregon plays. We're going to give this one to Oregon, and Oregon likely will play Boise State in the national title game as I see it. How about this? We're going to switch gears here real quick. Talk about this. How about the USA Today? And they say that a winner, after 9 months, steps forward to claim a $1.1 billion Mega Millions jackpot. Oh, yeah. How do you like that? Boy, that's one hell of a story, when you think about that and you say, those people, whoever it is, we don't really want to say their names because, if we do that, then what are we doing? We're promoting something where maybe they don't want to be promoted. But one lucky person in New Jersey, yes, not in California for a change. How do you like that? Not California. So in New Jersey, yes, won that gigantic jackpot for the New Jersey Lottery. The Mega Millions jackpot was worth $1.12 billion, the fifth highest in the game's history, according to the New Jersey Lottery. And the player who chose, the player, of course, we like to say player because what? We talk at sports, who chose to remain anonymous will take home $537 million. So what they're doing, they're giving up. That's before taxes, by the way. So before state and federal taxes, it's $537 million. So they basically are walking away from almost $500 million walking away from that. And the taxes are going to come in. They're going to take at least half of that. So they're going to walk away with about $270 million from the $1.1 billion jackpot. Boy, you want to talk about paying taxes. I mean, that's crazy. What kind of tax return are they going to get in that one? I mean, this goes back to, March 26th. That's a huge jackpot. I guess that's kind of what Ohtani has to face, and maybe even Juan Soto and these big deals that they're involved with when it comes to taxes. But Ohtani was smarter. He took the big deferment. All right, speaking of payoffs, I said we'd mention Northwest Indiana here. And, of course, all of our friends on Chicago Food Favorites can identify with this one. Northwest Indiana, it's basically extended Chicagoland. And so I had mentioned that I took drives over to Northwest Indiana to see my family and so forth. Well, it happens that the New York Mets reportedly reunite with Sean Manaea on a 3-year deal. And Sean and I have the same aunt. We have the same Aunt Joy. How do you like that? So Sean got himself a 3-year deal. Good for him. Sean's from Wanata, Indiana, which is right down the street from Knox, Indiana, where our aunt lives. And good for Sean. Good for Sean. He's really turned it around. It's a nice feel-good story for athletes from Northwest Indiana, also for the family as well. So the New York Mets, of course, have made the move to solidify their starting rotation in the wee hours of Monday morning, and they reportedly agreed to reunite with left-hander Sean Manaea on a 3-year, $75 million deal per the Four-Letter Network. Now, Sean's going to be 33 years of age in about a month and a half and had a career year last season. 3.47 ERA, 184 strikeouts, over 32 starts, 181 and two-thirds innings. And look, that's the lowest of his career, and he maintained over most innings that he's ever pitched on top of it, and of course anchored the second most strikeouts he's ever thrown. Before last season, his best numbers came with the Oakland A's in 2018 when he had a 3.59 ERA over 160 innings and a third. And back then, Sean also threw a no-hitter for the Oakland A's. Nice to see that Sean is doing well, and good for him and good for Aunt Joy. All right, nice round of applause for Aunt Joy. All right, now speaking of family, how about the Manassian brothers? So Zach Sr. is a really good friend of the Sports Circus. He's got a book out there called Lasorda University. Check that out on the Facebook. You can find it out on Facebook. You can also find it on the Chicago Food Favorites page, and you can also find it on thesportscircus.com. There's a link for that particular book, Lasorda University. It's a great book, lots of fun reading. But his two sons, boy, what a great dad story this is. He's got Perry, his son, for the Angels as the general manager, and Zach Jr. as the general manager for the San Francisco Giants. Now, the question is, will the brothers make a first trade as siblings as general managers? And it's appeared first on NBC Sports Bay Area, quickly out of San Francisco. When Zaidi was hired back in 2018, some of the initial questions were whether they would leave the Giants to break their run of not making notable moves. Well, guess what? Zach's Manassian's brother Perry is the GM for the Angels, as I said, and if the two and their respective jobs are long enough, they figure to make a noteworthy trade, and of course, that may be coming. Now, think about this. When the two worked in different roles for the Brewers and for the Blue Jays, they helped facilitate a swap of right-hander Sean Markham and Brett Lowry. But last year, Zach was part of the front office group that sent reliever Mike Baumann to the Angels for $100K. And of course, recently on Giants Talk, Zach explained how their close relationship makes it easier to sift through some of the nonsense that trades actually happen with. So we're going to look forward to Zach and Perry making a move. And of course, congratulations to Zach Sr. on one hell of a family doing a great job with the boys. And that is a wonderful thing. We're going to give Zach Sr. a nice round of applause. And again, check out Lasorda University, folks. That's all good stuff. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the circus today. I'm your Ringmaster Sal, and we'll see you next time right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.